Today we have a special guest, Jen Leng from Bendon. She's going to be talking about Google Analytics. We are really grateful to have her here. She's an expert in this area. We had originally scheduled Google coming in, but they had an emergency and weren't able to make it. So we are epically grateful to Jen for stepping in. Now, the way this session is going to run is Jen's going to be taking us through some information. We will answer questions probably intermittently. So we'll talk about some information, take some questions, and then take some questions at the end. If there are any questions, I know with sessions like this in the past, we get a lot of questions. So if your questions don't get answered, I will pull them from the chats in the comment section and I will submit them to Google, and we will get your questions answered and send them out to you via an email. Okay, so we want to make sure that you get everything you need from this session. Now, just a quick reminder, depending on what platform you are on, you can engage with us throughout this session by using the comments, question, chat, or Q&A functions. Please drop your questions in. Even if it's not question time, start typing. It'll save us some time when we get to that period of the session. So without further ado, Jen, thank you so much. We really appreciate you joining us here today at Digital Boost.
Kia ora, Anna Marie. Kia ora, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. It's a privilege to speak to you today. I'm hopeful this morning that I can share some practical advice with you today about Google Analytics, what its strengths are, how to use the data that's there, and perhaps if you haven't already, why you should invest in adding the code to your website. I consider myself more of an intermediate GA user. I know my way around, but may not be completely confident in some of the ninja level questions that might arise today. But I'll do my best, and I commit to saying I don't know if I don't know.
That's fantastic. And you know what, because these platforms, these tools are ever changing, even like I had said to you before this session, even when Google comes on, often they go, oh, actually, I'm not sure about that. I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. So your probably intermediate level might be our ninja level. So have no fear with that.
Well, fingers crossed, and we'll just muddle through. So this today will be more of a guided tour of GA and the things that are most helpful in our business. But before we kick into that, I thought I would start with a very short introduction to Bendon and myself, just to set the scene. So I'm going to try, bear with me while I do some screen share magic.
Yeah, no, that's great. I'm actually going to stop my video. I'll make sure that your share screen is working. I'm going to make sure everything's running in the background. Perfect.
All right. So what I've done now is I've actually managed to hide my notes. So just one moment, sorry.
Joys of share screens. Now, will you sort that out? I'm just going to remind everybody that we have a competition running. So make sure you're checking that out. And we've got lots of good sessions coming up in the next few weeks, including some sessions from our in-house experts about how to get your business sorted and ready for the holiday season. We're going to be running those the last week of this year, 20th to the 24th. So stay tuned for those to hit the website shortly. Right. Are you all good?
I think I am finally.
Perfect.
Sorry.
No stress at all. We're not in a rush.
So I'll quickly whip through this. I'm sure many of you are aware of Bendon. We were founded in 1947 and are now a global leader in intimate apparel and sleepwear. The name Bendon was created by the founders way back then, who wanted to revolutionize the industry with bras that could actually bend onto a woman's body. Because of that heritage, we understand women and their needs, no matter what their life stage. We have a long history of creating beautiful, innovative lingerie that's designed to enhance comfort and fit. At the moment, we're a house of brands with 7 core brands under the banner of Bendon lingerie. Our current channels are retail and outlet networks in Australia and New Zealand. Our e-commerce channel ships to those destinations, and our wholesale operation, which works with partners like Farmers and David Jones, but also ships further afield, including the UK and Europe. E-commerce, which I'm responsible for, currently represents 10% of total revenue, but is forecasting to grow significantly through our strategic initiative to win in Australia. For myself, I've been in digital for over 20 years, covering industries from financial services to travel and tourism to retail. Before joining Bendon earlier this year, I was agency side for 4 years, working on the user experience of Countdown online shopping, as well as with clients like in New Zealand, Vodafone and Fletcher's. Something I'm passionate about is normalizing and vocalizing what it means to be a woman. I championed the change for Countdown to rename their sanitary products category and area of the supermarket to period care, because I feel very strongly about normalizing that sort of language and banning euphemisms. So at Bendon, I try to be the voice of the customer and bring that into all of our business decisions. And I particularly care about breast education and inclusivity. What I thought we could cover off today is basically my top 5 uses for GA. These are the things that I would use on a daily or weekly basis. So we're going to talk about audience profiling and touch on some of the key demographic and tech information that would be useful to most e-com websites. Things like gender, age, location, technology. Then look at where the traffic is coming from and what that means, and look at how that changes over time. Then I'm going to focus a little bit on our e-commerce KPIs, key performance indicators. So things like revenue, conversion, average order value, number of transactions, and a little bit about product and category performance. Then we'll move into site search, looking at search terms and conversion rates. And lastly, a little bit more of a stretch around using and creating segments. There are some limitations to GA, and I'll touch on a couple of the ones that I'm aware of. And then I will hand over to see if you've got any questions. Now, as I'm slightly just winging the content, I'm happy to try to include anything that's of particular interest to you all. So if you could put in the chat any specific questions you have, I'll try to cover them either as we go or when we wrap up at the end. So I think probably the best thing to do is to get stuck into it, which means I'm once again going to switch my screen sharing.
Yep.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the home screen of Bendon Lingerie Google Analytics for Australia. We have separation of our Australian and New Zealand websites, and it makes it easier to understand the differences in terms of audience and performance, and obviously there's a currency difference in there as well. So this excludes New Zealand. Our configuration also excludes internal IP addresses, which is something that I would recommend that you do. It just means that if you have a sudden spike in traffic at launch, for example, or over a weekend, you're not necessarily, it's not being exacerbated by the fact that staff and internal people are, hitting the website and causing an unnatural spike. So we are going to look at our Australian site, and just to ensure that there's nothing too commercially sensitive, we're actually going to look at information from a couple of years ago. So you're not seeing the latest data, and this sort of information is in the public domain now anyway. So apart from the dashboard, which is kind of looking at a live traffic and performance site, your main navigation options sit under reports in the left-hand menu. And we're actually going to pull a report from most of these top 4 sections here: audience, acquisition, which is where your traffic is coming from, behavior, what people are doing on your website, and then conversions. And if you don't actually sell product on your website, conversions is still important, because you can create goals, and goals might be a contact or a subscription to your newsletter. All right, so jumping into the audience metrics then, I'm just going to touch on the overview screen. You can see in the top right-hand corner the date range that is there. So that's sort of a 3-month period, summer 2019. And you can see the daily users to the site at the moment. So it looks like we had a spike on Boxing Day and a spike on Black Friday in 2019. If I wanted to look at that weekly or monthly, everything is available in this panel up here to change. And it looks like traffic was highest in November, slightly lower in December, and then settling in January. That's a typical seasonal pattern that we would expect to see. And then these are your key metrics on the page. So users and new users. What you would think about these as an individual person or IP address visiting your website, and then the new users is the proportion of them that Google has detected hasn't repeat visited your website. So there's no cookie, there's no traffic, that sort of thing. Sorry, kids in the background. And then sessions is what we used to call visits. So at this stage, you can see that the average number of times that somebody returned to our website is 1.59. Hopefully those sorts of metrics are bread and butter to you. But what's quite interesting is when you start to unpack a little bit who these people are that are visiting your site. And Google is able to detect demographic information for a proportion of your visitors. And so we'll be able to see a little bit more how many users, as in what proportion we can detect that sort of information for. So if you look at the demographics report under audience, you'll immediately get a snapshot of our audience profile. You can see that the largest proportion of online shoppers for Bendon Australia sit in the 25 to 34 age bracket, and predominantly female, as you would probably expect from a lingerie company. If we look into age further, then GA will actually break down on a daily, weekly, or monthly view what the breakdown of age is. And within this report, there's a couple of things that it's worth kind of unpacking a little bit further. So your default view is basically saying per age group, how many visitors, new visitors, how many sessions did they have, what the bounce rate is. So when somebody comes to your website, views a page, and then bounces straight away. In some cases, a proportion of bounce will be because that person has found the information that they were looking for, like what's your address or when are you open. But bounce can also be an indication that people aren't finding what they need or are choosing to shop somewhere else. But if you actually look in the Explorer view, we can break down site usage, goals, and e-commerce. And so if I click on the e-commerce view, I can then see that in terms of conversion rate, so the people who are more likely to purchase on Bendon Australia, the top converting age group is 45 to 54. So that's quite interesting to me. It says that of the people in that age group, they're more likely to buy if we can get them to visit the website. So then when you think about the implications for that in terms of your reach, your social media presence, the creative that you've got, who you're targeting, what their advertising looks like, you know, there's a real opportunity in understanding some of those patterns. And then if we just jump over into gender, just for a comparison, you can see a very similar breakdown. I wouldn't worry too much about this dip here. That just potentially, that says to me that Google Analytics probably released some new code, or there was some new privacy features and they weren't able to detect demographic information for many users over that period of time. So this isn't my actual traffic. This is just the detectable proportion of it. And once again, if we look at the demographic breakdown, you can see, you know, for example, the bounce rate for male shoppers is higher, the number of pages per session for female shoppers is higher. That might be the insight that drives me to understand that a little bit more. How might we better service our male customers in helping them find product that's relevant to them faster to try to avoid them from bouncing and going somewhere else? It is a little bit like shouting into the void, presenting when you can't see any of the audience. So I hope I'm not going too fast, but if that's the case, please pop in the chat and I can try and slow the roll a little. So the next thing I thought would be worth pointing out is that you can get a geographic breakdown within Google Analytics. And so if we actually look at the location, you'll see that the majority of traffic coming to Bendon Australia is from Australia. So that stands to reason. But of course, we have customers that know us from all around the world. So it's not surprising to get traffic from other websites, particularly as a fashion retailer. You know, we get a lot of wholesale inquiries and also a lot of manufacturing inquiries as well. And then you can actually click into the country and it will give you a regional breakdown. So I've currently got it under region, but if I was more interested in cities, then I would be able to just switch that tab and see, you know, where that traffic is coming from. And that can be really interesting if you're doing any kind of event-based marketing, or you've got a particular goal to grow in a specific region. Otherwise, you know, this breakdown, it's roughly following population, so nothing too surprising in there. And then the last one, which I think every one of us needs to be very, very close to, is the mobile proportion. So, you know, as I said, I've been in digital for more than 2 decades, and the swing towards mobile usage has just, it's almost reached 100% now. That you have to have a mobile optimized website to be in the game. And ours is responsive. Bendon's website, you know, adjusts the viewport depending on what kind of device and screen size that you're actually having. But, you know, as somebody who's also worked in design, we always used to design for desktop and then have a version of that for mobile. And that's really switched now. We now, you know, talk about mobile first design, where you optimize your user experience for people on their handset, and then you can blow it out for desktop. And so what this is telling you is that from November to January 2 years ago, 60% of our traffic was coming from mobile. I can tell you that in 2 years that's gone to 70%, and slightly higher in Australia than New Zealand. But what you can actually see here, which is kind of interesting, is that 60% of users were coming from a mobile device, but only 45% of revenue and 47% of transactions were done on mobile. Now, that's not uncommon. You can get some browse behavior on mobile, and then people will check out on their desktop. And there's a number of reasons for that. But ideally for me, running this channel, I would like to see those figures much closer, because it tells me that there's no barriers and no friction to customers checking out on our website on their phone. So that is a very quick, rapid intro to audience reporting in GA. I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat and Q&A and see if there's anything in there. Perfect. Okay, so Joanna said, is there a reason why you use GA and not GA4? At this stage, GA4 requires slightly different code to be added to the site, and we have it in there. We aren't ready as Bendon to switch over to that new view. You know, it's still kind of, from my perspective, I don't want to be the first cab off the rank when it comes to GA4. But at the moment, we have the code there so that we're able to get a historical view of performance even before we switch over.
That's super smart. So there's a question here from Karen as well. I don't know if you can see it because it's in Q&A. And it says, I'm a small service provider and can't get a lot of information. Geographic information is about the only part that I can use, but would like to know more about them. Will this always be the case?
So if I understand your question correctly, Karen, that there's probably, in terms of your traffic, Google Analytics might not be detecting demographic information for enough of a proportion of your visitors to be able to supply that information to you. And you're not alone. I think GA4 that we were just talking about, the next version, has got a little bit more in terms of artificial intelligence and the ability to extrapolate and map that sort of thing. So I think that that would be one to explore with that platform. But for example, when I was thinking about what might be useful to run through with you guys, I was going to show you how I could use age segmentation to say which products are an older age group more interested in, and that report gives me 0 results. So it is definitely a constraint of the platform that, you know, if you're only able to detect, because people have privacy settings on, and firewalls and things like that, if you're only able to detect a proportion of your customer base that's actually using the website, then unfortunately not all of the reporting will work, even with the traffic that we get.
And I guess that kind of goes into this next question, which is, how does Google know the demographic makeup of your audience?
I mean, you would need to ask Google that, and I can 100% guarantee they won't answer that question. But, you know, like people have what we used to refer to as an identity passport. So anything that you use that is you know, you use your Gmail or your Facebook account to log into different platforms, which is, you know, sometimes called single sign-on. It means that that entity can be detected in a lot of places that it uses. So even if you as a business don't collect gender and age information, it doesn't mean that Google doesn't know from other usage with their own identity, you know, that information for an individual customer.
And actually, we had a session on cybersecurity with Pam Gare, and she was talking about don't use those Google like just sign in with your Google account, because it just like opens you, it's security wise, it's not the best practice. So if you need some more advice about that kind of stuff, do check out that session. She was really informative. Something else has popped up here. Would love age, but can't get it. Yeah, I guess that comes down to privacy settings and stuff like that. Totally. And as I guess the cookie apocalypse comes about, we get less and less information from these kind of platforms, but that's why we need a good list, and we need to be savvy in the way that we're collecting information. So awesome.
Yeah, and
thank you so much.
I think we're looking at GA here, but there's a lot of other things that you can do. So there are a lot of survey plugins. We've used one a couple of times on the Bendon website. I run what I call the customer mission survey. So you might sort of assume that it's safe to say anyone coming to our website is just keen on buying lingerie. But I'd like to unpack that a little bit further and say, what brought you to the site today? Were you able to do it? How was your experience? And please tell us, if you had a magic wand and could change one thing, what would you like to see changed with our website experience? And that's something that I've done for Countdown and for Bendon. And it's just it's a rich vein of data and insights. And so there's other kind of quite simple plugins that you can get to run those sort of surveys. And I would encourage you to always use the demographic data collection at the same time when you're doing that. Okay, let's move on now to traffic sources, and they sit under the acquisition report group. And I'm going to look at the all traffic channels report. Now, I might be teaching you to suck eggs here, but I thought just while we're here, it's probably useful to actually understand what all of these channels mean. So email is, Google has detected that we have sent an email out to our customer base, and they have clicked on that email and come to our website. And as you can see in this period that we're reporting, that is the highest proportion of our traffic. We have a really engaged customer base. It's really interesting because if you really boiled it down to averages, a lot of people would shop for lingerie only once or twice a year. But we have people who, break that norm right down and, see it as part of their fashion sense, as part of their, what's new season, what's the latest colors, and, get really excited and engaged with lingerie. So having a really good open communication with our customers is really important, but also really valuable for us. The next one down is paid search, and this will roll up Google, but also Bing and anything else you might be investing in. And that is where you are using AdWords to try to compete with other people in the same space for keywords. So that might be sports bra, for example, and we've actually bidded to get traffic to come to our website. And that's a really, it's getting more expensive, but it's a very cost-effective way of driving traffic to your site. Direct traffic literally means somebody has typed bendonlingerie.com.au into their address bar or clicked on a link from somewhere and come straight to us. Organic search is obviously the counterpart to paid search. So we do invest quite a lot of time in search engine optimization. That's a whole topic of its own right, but as well as having well optimized pages with the right keywords, etc., we do invest in our blog content so that we can, capture people who are just thinking about a needs-based journey rather than coming straight to Bendon lingerie. And that might be, I've heard about bralettes, but I don't know what they are or how to style them. Or my daughter is coming of age and she needs her first bra and I'm looking for some advice. Those are the sorts of, useful information and education that we provide to our customers that we also use to try and drive organic search. Social is obviously social media, and if I clicked into this one, you would be able to see a breakdown of which of those social networks is driving traffic to us. In this case, a couple of years ago, far more Facebook than Instagram, although that's balanced out a little bit. I just clicked on the breadcrumb in the top here to go back up a level. That's a little piece of trivia that I always like to tell people in case you aren't aware of it. Breadcrumbs is literally one of those tech metaphors based in real life, and it's like Hansel and Gretel with the breadcrumbs, and then they followed their way home. In case you were wondering why it was called a breadcrumb. Referral sites is really important and very beneficial for organic search as well. This literally means other websites that have links in their content to your site. And then affiliates is kind of the paid version of that. So we do deals with certain affiliate sites where it might be a coupon code or a competition or whatever, and that's sort of a paid arrangement to drive traffic to the site. Paid social is obviously where we're doing sponsored ads in social media. And then display. Display is what we used to refer to as banner advertising. So that's a basic rundown of what each of the channel groupings are. And for us, search and email is extremely important to us and where we invest a lot of time and energy. But I thought something else that might be good to drop in here is that you might be looking at that and saying, oh, wow, 23% of traffic is coming from email over that 3-month period. I wonder if that's changed. And so if you use the date drop down, you can do a comparison and it will default to the previous period. So if I go back over here, it's detected that I've got 3 full calendar months and it has defaulted to comparing to the 3 before that. But I could also look at the year before. So I could look at November 2018 to January 2019, or put any date range that I want in there. I've no idea if this is going to work, but if we just apply that, so we can see that we grew year on year in terms of our traffic, and it automatically puts the comparison as being assuming that you're wanting to see the comparison as being what's changed towards today. So they think the comparison is going to be the one that's in the past. You can change that around easily enough. And so what you would say is, hooray for email. Between summer 2018 and summer 2019, we more than doubled, 150% growth of email traffic to our website. So that is a little bit about traffic sources, and really just want to stress that all of these reports, you might look at this and go, oh, that's really interesting, but actually what you're looking for is the reason to take action. And so that's where I kind of look at all of this information. I do benchmarking and we have regular dashboards about how we're performing, but really you're looking for a signal of saying that's a really great opportunity for us, or that's friction, we need to improve that. Or what is happening, if direct traffic is changing, which is what you can see here. Direct traffic to bendon.com.au has changed over that period. Why is that? Was there something that happened in the market? In this case, yes, there was a situation with Heidi Klum coming to an end. So it's kind of understandable there, but it just kind of gives you the starting point for unpacking these threads and trying to understand that behavior a little bit more. It won't give you all of the answers, but it gives you a starting point. Okay, the next one I'm going to touch on is e-commerce. And if you've got an e-commerce site, you'll probably be living and breathing these metrics. If you don't, it might not be relevant to you. So I won't do too much in terms of definition, but suffice to say, these 4 metrics here, they're the stuff that we live and breathe on a daily basis. So revenue, how much money are we bringing in? Conversion rate, how many customers who visit our website end up checking out? How many transactions? And then average order value, or what we call AOV. This is the kind of key KPIs for any e-commerce website. And, when we compare and contrast e-com to, say, in-store, it's a very different kettle of fish when it comes to conversion rate. If somebody is walking into a Bendon store, we would expect 3 or 4 people out of 10 to walk out with product, whereas 2.78% online is actually pretty healthy. It depends what you're selling and what your customer base is and what your traffic's like, but yeah, 1 to 2% is probably absolutely fine. When you look at this graph here, you can see that it's got 2 measures on it. So it's got revenue and conversion rate. It's just it can be a little bit confusing because you've got 2 lines there, what this is actually telling you. But this axis here is the daily revenue we're looking at, and this axis here is the e-com conversion rate. And so you can actually see here any date point that you hover over with your mouse, you will be able to see both of those data points. And so on Boxing Day 2019, we did 35K of revenue in Australia and a 3.93% conversion rate. So when you compare that to the average, that was a pretty healthy day. And I just wanted to say, from our perspective, AOV tends to be quite high when you compare it to the cost of an individual item of lingerie. But that is because we offer free shipping if you spend more than $100. So our AOV hovers somewhere between $90 and $100, but if we put on free shipping, it drops down. And then the other report that I thought I would touch on is the product performance report. This is the one I was talking about not being able to do age segmentation, but it's still really interesting. So when you look at product revenue, you're seeing these seasonal spikes that are happening, and you can actually see the top products that we are selling. And so some of these products, Coral, Charlotte, Lace Perfect, Yvette, Sexy and Seamless, Damask, in fact, pretty much all of the top 10 are styles that we've done for a very long time, more than 10 years. They're the customer favorites that people keep coming back, refreshing their wardrobe every 5 or 10 years, and going back for the thing that they know and love and that fits them really well. Within this, though, what might you want to do? Well, you might actually want to say, what product, you might want to look up a specific product. So you can actually search for any product name in your catalogue. And it will bring back a subset that match those customer names. There's also the product category view. And this is often generated by the emails that we're sending at the time. So that's hence the long-winded product names, and then SKU if that was something that was important to you and your reporting. Product brand is always a really good one though. So at this stage, summer 2019, our most popular brand that we were selling was Fairform in Australia, and Heidi Klum being up there as well. But I can tell you that's changed. That profile has changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. So those are some really interesting reports. This one is one that I'm kind of constantly interested in, because I do think that the products that you're selling and the brands, if you've got multi-brands within your retail outlet, keeping an eye on how those change over time. It's really helpful when you're merchandising your website. So what are you promoting to the top? What are you making more accessible for people? And then if you think about the age demographics and the opportunity, it actually has quite a lot of implications for, what products you hero on the homepage or in emails that you just know is, going to be really popular and a really attractive offer for customers. So that's the first three, and I'm just going to quickly check in the chat. Question from Facebook. I'm keen to understand what other applications you use in conjunction with GA that help you understand your customer engagement on your website. That's a great question, and some of them are always on, and some of them are things that we use from time to time, like the surveying that I mentioned before. One of the limitations that I was going to touch on at the end is that GA doesn't do heat mapping. So sometimes, as well as understanding how many people come to your website and from a rolled up perspective, what they're looking at and what they're buying, sometimes you actually want to know what an individual page is performing like, particularly a home page or a landing page. And so we use another tool that's like a JavaScript bolt-on tool that works with GA to do heat mapping. And that means I can look at the homepage of Bendon and actually say, oh, well, only 60% of customers scrolled past the second screen full of information. Therefore, having men's briefs at the bottom of the homepage, no wonder people are bouncing off, because they're not being able to find, men are not being able to find product that's relevant to them fast enough. And it also, tells you what proportion of customers clicked on which banners or which links or which navigation items. So heat mapping for me is a really useful addition. There's probably a couple of other things that we do use as well as surveying, but those are probably more in the customer reviews, which we use a product called Stamped, and that also allows customers to ask questions on specific products. But we moderate all of those reviews. We post all of the reviews, whether they're good or bad, as long as they're about the product. So occasionally we'll get one in that says a 1-star review, you didn't reply to my email about the return. And that's not actually about the product, but otherwise, whatever it is, whether it's, absolutely, upset or angry for some reason, to, absolute love and this is the best bra I've ever owned. The one came through the other day that said, I feel like a damn queen. We read all of those. And so not only is that beneficial from a search engine optimization perspective, but it gives us that touchstone, and we pass all that product feedback on to our design team as well. So there's a couple of examples of other ways that we're sort of collecting and using customer insight on our website. I will just move on to site search really quickly, because this is actually what people are searching for on your website, as opposed to what is driving people to your website. You can see that information under the acquisition reporting if you look at keyword search terms, but this is actually what people are looking at on our website. So under the behavior reporting, under site search overview, you can see that over this period of time, only 7% of visitors actually did a search. That's probably a little lower than I would expect, and I think that has probably changed over time. But Some people like to search when they get to a website. Other people like to browse and look through categories and then filter down their search results. And what we often find is search is the fallback. If you can't find something you're looking for, then you'll try and use a search term. So it's not necessarily negative. It's just probably a little bit more skewed towards browse than some other e-commerce websites. And what you can see here is the top search terms. So no trouble that a few of the top ones are brand related. You would expect to see that. And then you've got a couple in here of product categories. So maternity being one of them and strapless being another one. So if we look at that in a little more detail, you can see the search terms. And again, you can actually look at the e-commerce performance of your search terms. So look at that. If you see a conversion rate sitting at over 10%, it sort of stands to reason that it's quite a specific thing that people are looking for. So Yvette is a style of bra. We've done it. It's one of those ones we've done for more than 10 years. And if people are coming to the site searching for Yvette, they know exactly what it is that they're looking for. Whereas, you know, some of the other ones, you know, strapless at 5%, that's still really healthy. And if I wanted to, I could sort on any one of these things. So if I wanted to say not the unique searches, but what resulted in the most transactions, I just click on that column header and it's going to tell me that Yvette over that period was sold 57 times. And Damask, which is another one of our most popular products, was sold 32 times. But maternity, again, was one of the high conversion rates, high frequency searches, and results in a high number of transactions. So there's a really nice action you can take off the back of that, is we need to make it really easy for people to find maternity bras. And then the last report that the last thing that I wanted to show you was just a little bit about segments, because at the moment we're kind of pogoing in and out of different reports. And sometimes you want to take two of those things and compare them at the same time. So the one I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to e-commerce. And I'm going to look at this weekly just to kind of tidy up the data a little bit. And what if I was interested here to see what the difference was between all users and mobile traffic? What do we notice about that? So at the moment, I've got the default, which is all users and 100% of sessions. And if I add a segment, you get this drop down and it's got a whole bunch of different options that you could compare to. So I could compare against bounce sessions. I could compare against people who checked out. I could compare against different platforms, whether they're new users. Or I could just look at this one here, which is mobile traffic. And this is a default system generated segment. So that will be available to you. Just click the checkbox, click apply, and that's going to generate a comparison report of mobile traffic versus all users. And you can kind of see here that there's a little bit of a difference in the pattern between Boxing Day and post-Boxing Day traffic. What this is telling us is that mobile traffic is converting at a lower rate when compared to all traffic. So again, I think we touched on that before, that we'd already seen that was a pattern. But there's again another way of looking at that. If we want to invest in our mobile user experience and try and remove as much friction from that journey as possible, would we see the mobile traffic conversion rate increase, and would we see the AOV increase? So that's a basic segment, but you can also build your own. So if I removed this, And let's say I wanted to say, you know what, I get the sense that we're not servicing our male customers well enough. We are, predominantly female products, predominantly female run business, but we do sell an awful lot of men's underwear, and it's something that we're a specialist in. So how can we understand whether we're doing a good enough job for that target audience? So if I said that I wanted to add a segment and then I wanted to create a new segment, basically every single data point that Google Analytics collects off your website is then available to you to make a segment. So there's everything down here: demographics, technology, behavior, when they were first a customer, where they came from, and a bunch of advanced features. But this is really simple for us, is that if we just look at this, females detectable within our traffic is 12% of users. Males detectable within our traffic is 3% of users. And here's the unknown. So remember how I said about 15% was detectable? You can actually look at the unknowns as a separate segment. But in this case, we want it to be our male visitors, and we're going to call that men only. Save that. And there you can see of the detectable audience for men, the conversion rate is roughly the same, and they're spending slightly more money. So we could then start to look at what they're searching for, what pages are converting well, how the overall pattern of site content, number of pages is, and try to understand, okay, where's an opportunity to improve on some of our key metrics. And the good thing now about having created that segment is that it will always be available. So I could remove that, go into product performance. I won't get any data out of this, as we've already discussed. But if I wanted to see if I could get some data, then we've created that segment so it appears under custom segments, men only. And then I can apply that to whatever report that I'm looking at. So I hope that gives you guys something that you haven't heard of before, and a couple of reports that you want to go and look at your own data and see if there's any insights there that you might think, I'm going to make a change off the back of understanding that a little bit better. We did talk initially about limitations of Google Analytics. And obviously the heat mapping is something that we've already touched on. There is a lot of powerful data in this platform, but the next level beyond what we've talked about today, it does need a little bit more advanced understanding about how to get the most out of it. And I can sense from the audience there's a desire to learn how that data is collected so that you can better understand what's being played back to you. And so there's plenty of training options out there on GA that will talk about those sorts of building blocks as well. So, hopefully this gives you something to go and have a play with, try out for yourself. But the Google Analytics training is also really useful if you want to kind of level up. And we've already mentioned GA4. So I think that was all of the main things I thought would be useful to cover off. And I know we've got 5 minutes left of the session. So I'm going to stop sharing and just check in with you guys to see if there's anything more.
Thank you so much. This has been such an informative session. It's really great to actually just go into the tool. And I've done all of the sessions this year, and I can say that we haven't had a look at Google Analytics in this way at all. And I really appreciate the speed in which you've gone through this tool, because it's been really easy to follow, I think, and often folks can get lost in data, and I didn't, like myself, and I didn't feel that way at all. So thank you so much for sharing that information, but also educating us on how to use this tool in a way to drive more sales and or just know our customer base a little bit better, which has been really interesting. Now,
it's my absolute pleasure.
They said you were the best, and they did not. You have not disappointed, I will say. Now, there's a question here from Facebook. It says, with heat mapping, what products would you recommend from your experience? So I know that I don't know if Hotjar is actually involved in what you're talking about, but yeah,
that's the one that that's the one that we're implementing. Yeah. There used to be a couple of other tools. We're going back a really long time ago now. There used to be a couple of other tools that you would potentially use. You know, there was an external traffic source one called Hitwise, but a lot of that stuff is now embedded into GA with all of the traffic sources and everything. Hotjar, so, and also GA used to have a heat mapping tool, but they're not supporting it any longer. So yeah, Hotjar is a really good one. I'm not sure how many of the other ones I've used previously are still in use, but it's the sort of thing that there'll be plenty of answers if you look, you know, in maybe Geek Zone as a forum. Like, there'd be plenty of experts in there that could give you the rundown. But yeah, Hotjar is the one we're implementing.
Is Geek Zone like a community or something? Ah, okay, cool. That's a great little tip. I'll just drop that in the chat as well. Geek Zone. I'll try and find you guys a link for that in a sec. No, that's fantastic. And I know that I've actually reached out to Hotjar to see if they would come on, but I haven't been able to get through to them yet to show us. But we did have a lady on that said sometimes she just sits down with a glass of wine and just turns on Hotjar and just sees what people are doing on her site.
It's a nice little bit of voyeurism. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And you know what? Funnily enough, you know, there's lots of you know, tools and techniques that you can use to kind of, you know, things like scarcity and urgency are, you know, well-known techniques for driving sales, and that kind of social proof of what other people are doing on your website is another one. That's why you'll see in some things, oh, you know, so-and-so from Whangaparoa just bought, you know, this bra or whatever it might be. It's a chance to kind of jump on the bandwagon and feel confident that, oh, well, if other people are buying here, it must be good.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you know what, I just want to say, just on a side note, that, you know, the ideas behind what you guys are doing with the inclusivity at Bendon is really lovely. And the work that you did at Countdown was really quite inspiring. So thank you
Thank you. Yeah. It's something that I'm super proud of, and was actually a world first. And I know that has created at least 3 other retailers to change their language as well.
Yeah, good on you. You're a star. I'm just going to jump onto Facebook. So just really thank you so much. Really great session. Just check YouTube and LinkedIn, and we're all good. It looks like, you know, sometimes when you do these walkthroughs like this, we just get to follow along. So it's quite easy for us to know what's happening, and maybe there aren't as many questions, which, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. So thank you so much, Jen, for your knowledge today and for stepping in on such short notice. Honestly, obviously you can talk about this underwater, which is why you were able to do this on short notice, and we really appreciate your time. So thank you. We hope you have a wonderful holiday season, and wishing you and yours, you know, a samaroha. And thanks for all the great mahi that you've been doing out here in Aotearoa and beyond.
Kia ora, everybody. Feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn.
Awesome. Ka kite.